Welcome to The Growth Spurt, a weekly AI podcast by the Second Baptist Church of Ann Arbor. Today, we're going to be diving into this powerful sermon. It's by Dr. Stephen J. Daniels, Sr., and it's called I Release You. It's really about forgiveness, moving on, and recognizing God's presence, even when, life gets tough.
Yeah, you really hit the nail on the head with that summary. What I think is so striking about this sermon is how Dr. Daniels uses the story of Joseph and his brothers. I mean, it's a story most of us already know, but he brings out all these nuances that really make you reconsider the whole concept of forgiveness and favor.
Oh, absolutely. Like right from the start, the sermon kicks off with the death of Jacob. Joseph's father and his brothers are just terrified. They think Joseph's going to come after them for revenge for what they did. Like they even sent him a message saying it was their father's dying wish, that Joseph forgives them.
Talk about some serious guilt and fear, huh? It really highlights the burden they've been carrying all this time. But then Dr. Daniels points out this powerful moment. Joseph's reaction to the message. Instead of anger, he weeps. What do you make of that?
That's what really got me. I mean, it's not the reaction you'd expect, right? I feel like you'd anticipate rage, bitterness, even maybe like a cold indifference. But tears, it just suggests such a depth of emotion. That goes way beyond simple forgiveness.
You're so right. It makes you wonder what those tears really represent. Is it grief for his father, maybe relief that the truth is finally out, or even like compassion for his brother's torment?
That's such a good point. And then Dr. Daniels takes it even a step further, right? He asks us, when was the last time you had a good cry? And it doesn't mean just a few tears, but like a real purging of pent-up emotions. Like he's saying sometimes tears are necessary for healing and moving forward.
I think that's exactly it. He's highlighting how important it is to acknowledge our pain and not try to suppress it. Maybe those tears could be a way of releasing hurt, thanking God for getting us through tough times, and acknowledging that we're still here. It's really a powerful image of resilience and faith.
Totally. And then this all leads into his message of releasing burdens, starting with the people who have wronged us. He really emphasizes that forgiveness is more about us than them. Like their apology or lack thereof shouldn't hold us hostage.
Right, like he's saying God's favor is so much greater than any human apology. There's no time machine to go back and change the past. So holding on to resentment only stops us from experiencing God's grace right now.
Then he moves on to the second burden, the hurt of the past. And he uses this incredibly vivid image, God collecting our tears in a bottle. I mean, it just stopped me in my tracks.
It really is beautiful and comforting, isn't it? God sees and acknowledges our pain. He offers comfort and encourages us to let go. He carries our sorrows so we don't have to.
It really resonated with me. But then Dr. Daniels gets even more challenging, right?
Yeah.
He asks, am I God that I can punish you? And it's like this wake-up call about how easy it is to cling to anger and to want to see others suffer for what they did.
Exactly. That's the third burden he wants us to release, our own flesh, our desire for retribution. He reminds us we don't have to operate from that place. We can choose grace and mercy, even when it doesn't feel deserved, because we've all received so much grace ourselves.
It's not about condoning what they did, though, right? It's about understanding that holding on to anger only hurts us more than anyone.
Absolutely. It's about understanding that forgiveness is a process. It's a journey, not just a decision you make once. It takes time to work through the hurt and the injustice, and to ultimately choose to let go.
I love how he illustrates this with a personal anecdote, too. It's about this youth praise dance group who weren't happy with the song choice. And instead of getting defensive, the ministry leader just said, I release you. It's such a simple but profound act.
It's beautiful. It really highlights the power of letting go and choosing peace over conflict. It's about releasing those who've wronged us from the power they have over us and freeing ourselves to experience God's blessings more fully.
So how does Dr. Daniels tie all of this together at the end of the sermon?
He ends with a powerful challenge for all of us to enter the new year, 2025, with a spirit of release, to look at those who've hurt us, those situations that still sting, and declare, I release you.
Wow, that's a powerful call to action. But for those of us who've been deeply hurt, the idea of just like releasing those who've wronged us can feel impossible.
Oh, absolutely. And Dr. Daniels gets that. He's not saying it's easy or that the pain just vanishes, but he does remind us that holding on to those hurts, it just keeps us trapped in the past. It stops us from experiencing the freedom and healing God offers.
He's not dismissing the pain, though.
Yeah.
Or minimizing the offense. It's more about shifting our focus. When you just say,
Exactly. It's about choosing to release those people from the power they have over our emotions, over our well-being. It's about reclaiming our own peace and joy. and not letting their actions control our present or our future.
And he uses the story of Joseph to really show us what that looks like, right?
Hmm.
I mean, talk about someone who had every reason to hold a grudge. His brothers literally sold him into slavery.
It's really a remarkable example of forgiveness and reconciliation. Joseph could have easily gone for revenge, especially with all the power he had in Egypt. But instead, he chooses compassion. He sees the bigger picture. He recognizes that God even used that awful act for good.
You know, that line always gets me. You intended to harm me, but God intended it all for good.
Yeah.
Such a powerful statement of faith, recognizing God's hand even in the darkest moments.
It really does speak to the transformative power of choosing to see God's purpose, even when it doesn't make sense to us. It's about trusting that He can bring beauty from ashes, redemption from our deepest wounds.
It reminds us that our perspective matters. We can choose to dwell on the pain and injustice, or we can choose to see the bigger picture, trusting that God is working even when we can't see it.
Yeah, and even though Joseph forgave his brothers, Dr. Daniels points out that they still had to live with the consequences. They lived in fear for years, constantly worried about payback.
That's an interesting point. It kind of suggests that sometimes the natural consequences are enough. Like, we don't always have to be the ones to punish.
Exactly. It's recognizing that God is a God of justice, and He will deal with those who've wronged us in His own time and in His own way. Our role is to let go of the burden of judgment and vengeance.
You know that story about the praise dancers and the ministry leader? That one really stuck with me too.
Yeah.
It's such a simple situation, but it perfectly captures this idea of releasing control and choosing peace.
It really does. It highlights how releasing those who've hurt us isn't always this big dramatic thing. Sometimes it's about those small daily choices. To let go of pettiness, to let go of the need to be right, to choose harmony instead of discord.
And sometimes it's just about choosing our battles. Not every little slight or disagreement needs to turn into a conflict.
Right. It's about recognizing that our peace and joy don't depend on other people or on what's happening around us. True peace comes from within, from a place of surrender and trust in God.
So if we really take Dr. Daniel's challenge to heart, what does it actually look like to enter the new year with this spirit of release?
Well, I think it starts with honestly looking at our own hearts. What burdens are we carrying? Who are we holding captive with our unforgiveness? What past hurts are we clinging to that are stopping us from moving forward?
I mean, it sounds like a tall order, especially when those wounds still feel so fresh.
Oh, it is. It's definitely a process, not like a quick fix or anything. But Dr. Daniels really encourages us to think about what those burdens are costing us. Are they robbing us of joy, peace? The ability to really experience God's fullness.
Yeah, that's a powerful question. Because I think a lot of times we don't realize how much those unresolved hurts are affecting us. They can really seep into everything. Our relationships, our outlook, even like our physical health.
It really is like carrying around this heavy weight day after day. It weighs us down, drains our energy, and it just keeps us from moving forward with that freedom and lightness.
So how do we even begin to release those burdens? It's easy to say, I forgive you, but actually letting go, that feels so much harder.
Well, Dr. Daniels suggests it starts with acknowledging the pain, bringing it to God in prayer, being honest with Him about our hurt, our anger, our desire for justice.
So it's not about pretending those feelings aren't there. It's about being real with God and with ourselves.
Yeah.
About how deep the wound really is.
Exactly. And then it's about making that choice to surrender those feelings to God, trusting that He sees the injustice, that He cares about our pain, and that He will work things out for our good in the end.
It's about shifting our focus from the person who hurt us to the one who can heal us.
That's it. And as we do that, we open ourselves up to really experiencing God's peace and comfort. We free ourselves to move forward, not unburdened by the past, but empowered by God's grace to live in the present.
So as we get ready to step into this new year, maybe Dr. Daniels' challenge to release is the perfect invitation to finally leave behind all that baggage that's been weighing us down.
It's a chance to step into the fullness of God's favor and experience a freedom and joy we may never have thought possible.
It's about choosing to walk in forgiveness, not because those who hurt us deserve it, but because we deserve to be free.
And because in that act of releasing, we discover how deep God's love and grace really are, and that transforms us from the inside out.
So as you reflect on this sermon and prepare for the new year, what burdens are you carrying that might be hindering your relationship with God? What would it look like to release those burdens and step into the freedom that God has for you?
Remember, releasing doesn't mean you're condoning or forgetting. It's about freeing yourself from the weight of the past, so you can fully embrace the blessings of the present and the hope of the future.
Go in peace, be blessed, and may the joy of Jesus be yours. We'll see you next week.